Hi, I'm Rocket. Welcome to a Whiteboarding with Rocket. In this session, I'm going to walk you through the current setup of the Whiteboard Studio. So a couple of things as we get started here. I've optimized this studio for two different scenarios. One is spending time in a video conference and sharing the whiteboard and collaborating with people. And the other one is recording these videos. And so between those two, I have really focused on optimizing speed of production of video and quality of the experience when participating in remote video conferences. To do that, the investments look different than if I were to optimize for one or the other. So at one point, I started with using iPad as my primary video recording. That worked really well up until a point. There was a couple of things that prevented me taking that further. One was, if I wanted to do the video editing on my computer, moving the files from the iPad to the computer was taking a lot longer than I wanted it to. Yes, there's ways to extract files and move them across. And it was just one of those points where I was like, okay, well, I have two choices. I can figure that out and move all that around, or I can set up an iPad workstation. Yes, you can do that. Now you can have an external monitor, keyboard, mouse, video, and basically it's a computer. It's not the greatest experience, but it definitely works. And as I was about to embark on that process, I thought, there's probably some different ways to make this work. And so I pivoted away from iPad. I was using iPads that I had before, and I also had some other cameras. And so then I started working with using HDMI cameras for the inputs. And that's where I really decided that I wanted to go that direction for a lot of different reasons. So then I wanted to make sure I invested in the right amount of time in both the quality of the picture and the quality of the sound. When it comes to the quality of the picture, one of the number one deciders is lighting. So I spent invested a bunch of time and effort in getting the lighting optimized. Then when it came to sound, it was a matter of how can I reduce the post-processing time I was investing in making the sound better. And many of you know this, 80% of a good video is good sound. And so making sure I had good sound right from the beginning was important. And I've ended up with a configuration that I feel works really, really well for both lighting and the sound. So I'm going to walk you through the logical configuration of the setup and how it's all connected. Then I'm going to walk you through the lighting setup. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the automation capabilities, which helps keep me sane and make sure that I have a repeatable process. At the heart of this is an ATEM Mini Extreme. ATEM Mini Extreme, very wonderful piece of equipment. It's lots of functionality. It's doing things that I am just blown away by for the price. In this case, what we have is a laptop, and we have the output of the ATEM Mini Extreme connecting to the laptop and acting as a webcam through a USB-C connection. Interestingly enough, I've had challenges with this, and I don't know if it has to do with my laptop. I don't know if it has to do with the ATEM Mini Extreme. And I don't know if it has to do with the software I'm using for video conferences. What I do know is I go into certain video conferencing solutions and my camera is frozen, or it doesn't show up, or I have to push I have to switch the inputs a bunch to get to a point where it recognizes there's a video signal. I've changed the cables, I've changed the inputs, I've done a number of different things here. I just don't know what's going on. So what I decided, because this happened enough times in critical junctures where I ended up having to reboot the entire system just to get it to work, I decided, let's find a secondary input for that and make it my backup. So what I've got is an HDMI output from the ATEM Mini to a cam link, which is a USB-C or USB to HDMI converter. And so that's been flawless. And I'm to the point where I'm potentially going to make that my primary input and the USB-C the secondary. Anyway, that's been one of those interesting challenges that I didn't expect. Also, on the ATEM Mini, I have an SSD connected to do recordings. So to record this video, I'm able to do that directly from the ATEM Mini to that SSD, and then I just transfer those files over to my laptop and begin editing them there. The nice thing about that, the way this is recorded, it's recorded in a more compressed format. And I'll talk about how I was doing this before, because you'll understand why this is important. Also from the output of the laptop is an HDMI output that comes into the ATEM Mini, and I can show my desktop. Next, I have two cameras. So I have one camera that's above my computer that's shooting my face during video calls. And then I have a camera that's pointed at the whiteboard, this camera that you're looking through now. And that's nice because I can switch between the two, and I've got it solid mounted, so I don't have to spend a bunch of extra time worrying about getting this in place. I have an Apple TV as an input because of the ability to do AirPlay from an iOS device, from your iPhone, a Mac, or an iPad. And that's nice because then I don't have to connect any of those devices with some other external cable. I can go through that. I use it for recording demos. It works out really well. It's also great if you use a camera and you start the camera and then you stream that to the Apple TV, and you can walk around, and it's really sweet because it's going over the network, and I've got good Wi-Fi coverage throughout here, so I can go a lot of different places in the area to record that. So very interesting input. I've used it a couple of times and it's come in really, really handy. I've got a Raspberry Pi that's running a video playing software called PlayOutB. PlayOutB is in beta, but it's wonderful because it allows you to just directly upload videos into the Linux box or the Raspberry Pi and use a nice web interface, play those videos. This is great for doing things like countdown timers, overlay graphics. If you've got a pre-recorded video you want to share, this makes it really, really easy to do that. And then I've got a couple of open HDMI inputs for like roaming cameras that I can plug into, as well as other things that show up that I want to incorporate into the system. And finally, I have this Video Assist. And Video Assist I used originally because I had an ATEM Mini for input, but I didn't have the ability to record on that device. So I connected the ATEM Mini to this Video Assist, which has an SD card recorder so you can record the input. And that's how I did it for a long time. And it was great. The one drawback to it is the format of the recording is in ProRes, Apple ProRes LT. And I'm not going to go through all those video file formats. There's ProRes 444 and there's, HQ or whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just to know this, like a 10-minute video was 4 or 8 gigabytes. I mean, it was enormous. Just for a single 10-minute video. Whereas a 20-minute video and this highly compressed is less than 1.5 gigs. So you get an idea, right? So small video, huge video files that I end up compressing and then storing onto a hard drive so I didn't have to keep upgrading my hard drives. I've already had to upgrade them a couple of times from 2 terabytes to 4 terabytes. And you go from 4 and up and it starts to get really, really expensive. So I said, all right, when I got this ATEM Mini Extreme, that made all of this so simple, and it's a much more compressed and easy to follow workflow. But I use this for video monitoring, so it sits above my desk, and I can do a couple of different things with it. One, I can just see what the program output is, which is what is getting sent to everybody, or I can switch it to multi-view and see all the different inputs and get an idea of what's going on for all the different things. And that's got an input as well. And one of the things I do ever so often is if I need to do a double check on sound or video quality, I can just quickly record to this and then go over and play it back and see it very fast. So there's some goodness here that I really, really appreciate, and I like keeping it in the workflow. All right, next is sound. Let's talk about that. So I'll tell you, I started off with direct input into the ATEM, and that worked well, except I'd spend a bunch of extra time after the fact going through and editing. And I found, like, okay, how do I reduce that amount of time? So after some research, I ended up picking up a couple of preamps that do compression and sound cancellation and a handful of other things, and made that very, very quick. So I didn't have to spend all this extra time in DaVinci Resolve, which is my video editing software, sweetening the sound or taking out noises or doing all that kind of stuff. It did it for me. So that reduced quite a bit of time in post-processing. What I've done recently is I've added a mixer to the mix. And this has to do with being able to control multiple inputs. And then I have a future-looking thing that I'd like to do is to bring in external parties who want to do interviews. And I can have what's called a mix minus sent back to them so they can hear what's going on with the live stream or the recording, but they don't hear themselves echoed back. So this is a pretty cool feature that this mixer that I have does. It's a Behringer. And that's going into the microphone input into the ATEM Mini. I can also record individual channels if I wanted to, but that's something that I will be using in the future if I have multi-guest interviews and things of that nature, or participations in architecture reviews. So this is a pretty nice setup. I've got a Shure microphone that I use for doing screen recordings, and that's just it's a really sweet Shure, and it needs a lot of extra boost, and so that preamp helps with that. Then I have a lapel mic, which I use to do these, and that's a wireless lapel mic, and it's very nice as well. Let's look at the lighting setup. Oh man, the lighting. This took forever to figure out. It took over a year to get right. I would do bounce lights, I'd do the reflector lights, I'd do up lights. It was just all over the place. And in fact, at one point, I put two LED lights up here, individuals, and that was as close as I got until I got this set up. And what happened there was I'd get these shadows. So I'd get these funky color shadows down here at the bottom, and it wasn't great because the light overlap. So I found these LED lights that are 4 feet tall and 1 foot wide. I got two of them. One is up here, and then one is over here. And then I mounted them. I mounted the one over here onto a table using a clamp, super clamp. And then I mounted this one using a C-stand. And this worked out really nicely because then I'm not worried about I'm not worried about having to do a bunch of post-processing color correction, which is what I was doing. And one of the things you'll notice is I might be a little bit overexposed, just a tad. I'm okay with that, right? What the number one feature on these videos is the whiteboard. It's not me. I just happen to be talking about the whiteboard. So I optimized for making sure this whiteboard looked good from the very beginning, and I didn't have to spend a bunch of extra time fiddling with it afterwards. The last piece of the equation of the setup is the automation engine. I'm going to go on this side. So in this case, I've got a Raspberry Pi running the companion Pi software, and that's a very nice setup, and it uses the network to control different pieces of the equation. For example, I have a button I hit to record these videos, and it goes through and it does a bunch of different things, and then it starts the record and gives me a count for how long the recording's going, changes colors on this button. So this Stream Deck is the thing. The thing I forgot to tell you about. The Stream Deck is either a 16 or 32 button input that each button can run a macro, and you can have up to 100 different screens or menus, sets of buttons, so you can go up and down. So you have a whole bunch of things you can automate with this. And in this case, what I'm doing is I'm controlling the different aspects of the ATEM Mini, recording, the input, the layout, sound levels, a whole bunch of different things through this. And what's great about that is I don't have to remember to go click a bunch of things and inevitably miss something, which I've done too many times to count. And there's sometimes I still miss one or two things, but it doesn't have to do with what's been automated. It has to do with I forget to hit the focus button on the camera. Now I could get a camera that has a Ethernet connection that does a lot of that. That's way more of an investment than I want to make than right now. So in this case, that's easy. But anyway, I also control the mixer in terms of the levels and what's muted, what's unmuted. And then I also control the lights through simple, I've got home automation lights from, the plugs that can be triggered with home automation. So I have those remotely triggered as well. So that's nice. So I don't have to turn on a bunch of different things every time I want to jump up and record. I can just hit a couple of buttons and off I go. These are small things, but when you're optimizing for speed, these small things make a huge difference. I can tell you this has been a really great configuration for me. There's a handful of things that I'm looking to do. In fact, one of the big things I'm looking to do is have something along these lines set up in a mobile way. And I'm looking at the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, which can record all the different inputs. And the idea here is when we're back in person, if I hold a whiteboarding training session, I can have 2, 3, 4 cameras all pointed at whiteboards that people are writing on. And I can record all of their inputs at the same time. And then I can play those back individually and get feedback from them about how they're doing, or I can provide feedback to them. Also being able to do something similar, but with collaboration with remote people. Having people in the room being able to collaborate remotely as well. So it's one of these things. Right now, the interesting situation is most everyone is remote. So setting up something and then pointing the camera here and doing stuff is way better than having 5 or 6 people in a room and then trying to collaborate with them remotely here. So I want to be able to create a solution that you can walk in, set up within 5 to 15 minutes, and being able to share whiteboard in a high quality way from a room as well as being remote and participating. It's an ambitious project, and this hybrid setup is one that is going to take a lot of experiment over probably the next year to do. But based on all that I've done here, I know where I can pull back and where I need to further invest. For example, in a remote one, I'm not going to have the luxury of having preamps. I do need a mixer, so I need to be able to incorporate multiple. If I've got multiple people participating on the whiteboard, I want to be able to have a lapel mic for each, so I need multi-inputs. I want to be able to control what that sounds like, so that's one piece of it. The camera setup, right? How do I do that efficiently and effectively without pulling out all these huge camera setups, right? I want something small and easy that's high quality enough that people on the other side are going, yeah, this is good. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm Rocket. This has been another Whiteboarding with Rocket.